all, and welcome back to another thrilling episode of Off the Dome. I'm your humble interviewer, Jordan Brown, and with me for the very first time is our sensational sound mixer. Say hi, sensational sound mixer.
Hi, sensational sound mixer.
Ooh, that was a tough one for me. I was not prepared with how many S's there were in a row in that.
Honestly, you totally caught me off guard, and that was incredible. Well done.
TJ, thank you so much for joining me. This got scheduled, 2 hours ago or something? So I'm so excited. Before we hop into, I have a ton of questions about a ton of things. Obviously, the sheer number of layers of audio on Deja Vu. But before we get there, Tellies, Clios, I Can't Read My Own Handwriting, Webbies, all these awards that you've won for various projects. And then you come and do an episode of Game Changer like Deja Vu. Why are you wasting your talents with these goofs?
Honestly, I feel really lucky to be still a part of it all. I feel like I'm still waiting to be found out, that like somebody's gonna say like, hey, should we get rid of this guy? Because like he's been with us for a while now. Let's get somebody new. But they keep me around, and so it's really awesome. I came from advertising and short form TV commercials, and I'm a musician. And how I found myself at Dropout is still kind of just like a funny story to me. Like I met and was working with many people in the advertising industry in New York, and kind of like a classic web of networking where she worked with me on a project, and then she went to a different place, and then from that place she went to this place, and then randomly I got an email from her after not talking to her for like 2 years, and she was like, do you want to work on this show that I'm doing called Paranoia? We're in our second season. It's for kind of like college humor, Dropout. And I was like, yeah, sure. I used to love college humor. I was on the website all the time. I used to watch the shorts. But my imposter syndrome got the best of me because I had never mixed or worked in, quote, longer form. Like the lengths that I was used to working in was like 30 seconds, 60 seconds, like commercials. So working on a full like 30, 45-minute episode with multiple mics, reality style, improvisational material, music, sound effects was a little daunting. And after I said yes to it, I kind of, did the, oh shit, what did I do thing? And that led to them saying, hey, we also are working on the show Dimension 20. And do you want to take a whack at that?
And if you thought 30 minutes was long.
Yeah. I thought the first time I got an email exchange from them, I thought there was a typo. I was like, there's no way you meant 2.5 hours, right? And they were like, oh yeah, and that's just one of 20 episodes. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And then we all know what happened like at the end of 2019 and 2020. And I woke up to the news like everybody on Twitter and Facebook and all of that stuff. And I was like, hey, what's going on? Do I still have a job? And they were like, actually, yes, you're like one of 7 people that we're going to be needing. And then I started doing Game Changer, and then Actually, and then Make Some Noise. And then we started getting busier, and we started doing, more Dimension 20, and we were doing things remotely over Zoom. So we were figuring out tech hurdles of how to do that. And then the world kind of opened back up, and that became more shows and original, ideas like Play It By Ear. And my gosh, I'm forgetting like all the stuff that we've done. And then of course, Very Important People and all that. So it just kind of like blossomed into this thing that I now do every day, all the time. So I work on every episode of every show that Dropout does, with mix, sound design, music composition, music editing, dialogue effects, like cleanup, pre-production calls, all of that. So it's just a literal blast. And that was a really long answer, so I'm sorry.
No, that's exactly what I want. The less I have to talk, the better it is for everyone involved.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the only show you missed that's currently airing is Dirty Laundry.
Dirty Laundry. Right.
And then obviously we get Smarty Pants tomorrow night. So like a new show coming so soon. And then obviously, like Gastronauts, Dropout Presents, those kinds of things are on the way as well. I have so many questions, but I'll stick to an easier one, I guess. That just thinking of like Dropout Presents, and like D20 is currently filming in UK and Ireland. What is, I guess, like big differences for you when it's a live show versus a recorded in a studio? And I assume like obviously you have to balance out crowd noise and things.
Yeah, I think there's probably going to be a slight difference with that. I think mostly just with energy, like when you're in front of people versus when you're in a studio in front of the crew, which I feel like is probably much more of a safer, more familiar setting. So I'm anticipating a bit more energy and dynamics from the performers, but really live is kind of how I see it. Like everything that I do is mostly just cleaning and balancing as best as possible, because it's all about what the performers are saying and doing. And then I think, like, if we were looking at it in kind of order of importance, it would be dialogue. And then next supporting would be music and sound effects, where other things like narrative pieces and narrative projects and films and documentaries might kind of flip that triangle a little bit, and have maybe more music up front, more sound design up front. But Dropout is always dialogue up front.
Yeah. I forgot another show, Breaking News. The balance on that,
correct.
A new microphone added for this season, that they've mic'd some of the crew because we're getting bigger crew laughs. What is that balance as well, like in terms of, I know like the performers love when they get the crew to laugh. How much do you enjoy that as someone trying to balance out audio levels?
A lot. That was actually at my suggestion to put the mics in for the crew, because we started last season, we started getting some giggles, and it was only because I think some of the crew, or maybe even Grant sometimes, is lobbed totally off camera, and we were just picking up kind of ambient room sound and giggles. And I was like, this is great. Like, I love having that extra little material to play with. And ahead of the season that we're working on right now, which I think is 7 or something like that, I said, can we get like a boom mounted for the crew so that we could like kind of pepper that in? So I love it. The more material I have to play with as a sound designer and a sound mixer, the better. Like, it's just fun things that we can sprinkle in that make it feel a little bit less like they're in a vacuum and more like they're performing live improv in front of people,
Yeah. I know it's always fun, at least like watching the shows, because when a joke really landed because you can hear the crew laughing, and it's always such a delightful like moment. What jumps to mind is Izzy's episode of Very Important People, because you can hear Brennan like wheeze laughing at her in the background. And
I mean,
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that honestly, like, I get to participate as an audience member when I work on these, and the hardest I've ever laughed is on Very Important People. Like, moments where I have had to stop the mix because I can't hear over my own kind of like body laughing that's happening. I mean, it happens across multiple shows. Like Dimension 20 has some moments for me that have just killed me. Game Changer too, Make Some Noise. The episode that we did of The Bachelor with Grant talking to the girl who's the babysitter but also does pornography, and his quip back to her, I sent him a message. I was like, this is the best thing I've ever seen. Like, your reply to that was comedic gold. So hearing the crew laughter, I feel like, is almost just like my way of getting to like insert my own joy into it as well. But yeah, Izzy's episode was fantastic, and just all of them. I mean, you can't even single one out.
Is there one though that like really got you? What is the one that made you walk away? And was it Zac Oyama?
And tell me why it wasn't Zac Oyama. It was Zach's episode shocked me with how much I was laughing. I honestly couldn't get through that episode. It was just phenomenal. Also, Lisa Gilroy, it just has like the mind of like a race car. And seeing Lisa paired with Vic was just like, it was just watching like just choreographed like elegant dance happening. It was incredible.
Yeah. It makes me think of because I talked to Kevin Stiller at one point, and he told me the story of when he was shooting, because he was still on camera for Yes or No, the Game Changer episode, and he said that like during Brennan's monologue of like I can't win monologue, he had to let go of his camera because he was laughing so hard he was shaking it, and he realized that like his footage was going to be unusable because he couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah, and honestly, to go back to the beginning, like that's what I mean when I'm like, at the end of the day, we work really hard and we work long days and we work a lot. But like, I'm pretty much getting paid to laugh, which is kind of insane to me. Like, that's why I kind of still feel like I'm going to get found out. Like that they're like, wait, we're paying this guy? Like, but it is crazy to me because there are definitely challenging days, but at the end of the day, we're working on things that are making other people laugh too. And like, that's the best. I love that part of being able to do this. And I mean, the world is a terrible, scary place at all times during history, but it feels like particularly now, like laughter as medicine just feels so necessary. And the fact that we're only trying to just get better at making people laugh is like kind of a cool, cool thing to be trying to do.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, like I mentioned, I think before we started, I talked to Kyle Rohrbach as well, and he had said there are 17 series that are in some level of either pre or like some production level,
Wow.
which is obviously a lot. I didn't ask him, and I should have, if Dimension 20 counts as one series or if they each individually count as a series, but
I would imagine he's counting that as one because I definitely have the calendar ahead and I can tell you there's a lot coming up. But hearing the actual number of 17 is a little crazy. That's wild. I didn't even realize that.
As someone who has their hand in every episode, is that right?
Yes.
How, I mean, is it just, how do you do it? You've got, I mean, there's so much content coming out.
I'm really fortunate to be, well, first of all, I'm like high functioning, kind of like workaholic. So there's that. But then there's also, we have honestly such an amazing team of people on the post side of things, working with Kyle and Lauren Stone. And Lauren can put together a post calendar that is pretty much bulletproof. And we've been doing this. I used to work with Lauren years ago. And when she came back onto the team, it was a phenomenal thing because nobody puts together organization like Lauren. So I rest easy being able to like look at this and kind of see this avalanche of things coming at me, but knowing that like she's allotted the time for it. But outside of that, it's getting intense. It's definitely getting intense. So there might need to be some additions maybe made to my team, but until I get to the point of really throwing up the flag, it's just I like doing it all myself. And I like that it kind of provides a consistency across the whole kind of universe of shows. And, not to get too in the weeds here, but like for Dimension 20, the reason I can get through a 2.5 hour, 3 hour show kind of within the 2-day turnaround that I have to actually like receive this material, understand this material, and deliver this mix back is because I've been working on these shows with a lot of these performers since like 2019. So it was kind of weird. Like at our holiday party was the first time that I met a lot of people ever, because I work in Austin. I was in New York before that. And everything happens largely in LA. So it was the first time in person I met a lot of people, and it was kind of weird going up to performers being like, I know how you laugh. Like I can differentiate your nose laugh from Zach's nose laugh, and like Allie's nose laugh from Emily's. And like, I kind of just like know these people without knowing these people, which is a little bit of a mind fuck, but also, I know where they live on my fingers on the fader. So it's kind of, it's a unique position to be in, to be able to say, like, I know what to do when I see Brennan's in an episode or something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I will say, so I have a Spotify playlist called Funky Grooves to Study to, because when I am working, I can't have like songs with lyrics in them. It will, like, like if I'm trying to read or write or anything, like, gone. Like I can't focus when they're both. And Six Missing is like my newest best addition. I'm so excited to just like throw a bunch of stuff on there because it's all like stunning ambient like music. And you talk a bit about there's a line of thought in my head that this connected. I don't know if it made sense to you or not.
No, that's great. I also super appreciate the plug, so thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, sound is my world. Like literally, I do not fit into one neat box. Like I only mix radio, I only do TV. Like I work with sound in all aspects of it. So if it's a podcast, if it's a radio spot, if it's a TV spot of any kind, pharmaceutical to Super Bowl to any of that stuff, down to comedy television, game shows, all of this. And then also musically, creating, ambient meditative soundscapes for exactly what you're talking about. Like people who like listening to music because it kind of like tunes out the rest of the world and pulls your focus to the task at hand, or people meditating or relaxing or sleeping, or I've heard a lot of people say their babies enjoy it. So that's really cool too. For newborns, or out on walks or anything. Like, so I'm just a kind of like connoisseur of sound. Like I just really enjoy it. Well, how about that line of bullshit, huh?
It's good.
Pretty nice.
Yeah, throw that on the website. It's very funny. In that playlist, or a couple years ago, I was writing a dissertation or something nightmare that I was working on, and at the end of the year, Spotify was like, "You're in the fans of two cellos," and I was like, "Yeah." They make instrumental like rock music. Of course I am. Like I can listen to like Eye of the Tiger without the lyrics. It's perfect for writing because like I can get amped up, but I don't get distracted by like words. I was really excited to find that to get the ad Six Missing. Super fun.
That's really awesome. Thank you so much for checking it out.
Yeah.
Similar to you though, like when I'm working on an episode, like I hear the episode, but a lot of times like I don't actually understand the context or the content of it. So I feel like there's like, that's how I can keep kind of doing this, is because I'm hearing the words, but I'm not I'm hearing the words and the sound, but I'm not necessarily hearing what the words strung together are meaning. And I don't know if that's like my brain just sort of like in self-preservation mode, or if it's more just kind of like I'm listening for the technical stuff, I'm hearing to see if a lav is hit, or there's clothing ruffle, or if we have like radio frequency interference, or if somebody's mouth is a little clicky or something like that. So I'm hearing more the details than the actual context. So I do enjoy like getting to actually take in the episodes after the fact and be like, oh yeah, I remember that episode. And like, that's
so you
what
watch,
it's about.
Are you watching like weekly as it comes out? Or are you like popping back onto presumably your computer to watch like after the fact?
Yeah, I'll just kind of like do a check kind of on the various platforms that I feel most people are watching. I would assume most people watch on their phones with their earbuds, or on their computers or their laptops. So I'll check things like once they're airing to make sure that things are translating from like my nicely controlled studio to somebody's sound bar or like a built-in TV speaker or like a phone speaker. And it helps inform any sort of adjustments or changes that I might need to take into account moving forward. If I'm like, oh, I've got more room to play with music levels. That was my biggest thing, like on this episode of, or this season of Dimension 20, was I got a little bit more like aggressive with the music levels, just because I see people talk about the music tracks and they're like, wow, this is a cool music track. And I'm like, let's give them more, like, let's push it a little bit. So curious to see, like, I don't dabble in the Discord all that much, but sometimes I poke in and it's entirely overwhelming. There's a lot of activity there.
This is like a huge chunk of my life. I can't handle the Discord. Is it annoying that, like, if you've done your job well, no one is talking about it?
No, that's okay. I've been doing this for like almost 20 years. So I've gotten very comfortable in that position. And I've been in that way, like in bands, I've always been the engineer, the producer. In like productions of, middle school, high school shows, I always felt like I connected more with like the production crew, the stage crew, people behind the scenes, because I was like, wow, you're like making this happen. So it's just a place that I'm comfortable being. Sometimes I wish people would call it out and be like, that sounded fucking awesome. Let's go see who did that. But I'm just a sound nerd that way. Like, I'll always sit through the credits and look who the person is. And, or people, like multiple people, teams of people.
Yeah. So speaking of, that sounded fucking awesome. Answer the question we all want to know. Was that actually Zac's ankle that popped on Make Some Noise, or was there a sound effect added?
Ooh, I don't know. I can see the session in my head, and I know that we just updated our platform trailer and they're using that clip in there again, and the sound effect is there. So there is a sound effect, but I did very little to enhance what had happened there. You could actually hear what was happening on the microphones that day. I just did subtle enhancements to make it, quote, pop a little bit more.
Yeah. Look, there's my scoop for the whole thing. All we needed. I'm also curious. This is so stupid. Are you upset that you weren't accused of murdering Josh Rubin in that episode of Game Changer, where there was a different sound mixer on set?
No. So the production crew, I have kind of like not a lot of contact with. So we'll have kind of pre-pro sessions where I get to kind of give my 2 cents on things of like, hey, this season I could use a little bit more like boom on this person. Can we get some boom mics? And for those that don't know, boom mics are kind of like the microphones that sit above out of frame, that pick up performer's voice that's different than the lavalier that they wear. So I use a combination of all of those sources to get the sound mix. So I mean, I'm strictly post. The production team and all of that, like, it's general chaos that they have to deal with. So no, I'm not sad about that.
Are you getting raw footage? Or are you getting like finished edits from like Eve Hines, and you're going in and cleaning things up, or are you cleaning up before edits are made?
No, unless there's something that was especially problematic. There's been a couple of things, like any production, that comes up when you're doing something long enough, and you'll run into issues. We've had some things where, like, in the edit, they'll say, hey, this microphone is pretty badly damaged. Do you think this is going to be a problem? Should we kind of like come up with a different solution? Should we see if we can get a pickup record session or something like that? But for the most part, 99% of the time, I'm getting the episode locked and generally cleaned up from all the editors. So Eve, Sam, Jared, Ash, Tyler, Kyle. Oh God, there's so many of them now. So I'm sorry if I'm forgetting anybody, but the editors are incredible. I mean, it's some of the best team that I've ever worked on and with like in the industry. It's insane the amount of material that they're getting and kind of putting it so cleanly together.
Yeah, I mean, I know, like, I talked to Eve recently. That was why I threw that name out, because it's like, I know one for sure.
Love
Yeah,
Eve.
yeah,
Love Eve.
so good. And it's one of those. It's a funny thing because, like, having talked to Tamar and Vic, it's one of those things where like everyone says like the show doesn't exist without Tamar, and then everyone else says like, oh, the show doesn't exist without Eve. Like it's those like obviously the show doesn't exist without Vic. Of like all these important pieces. Of course, obviously the show genuinely doesn't exist if we can't hear it.
Right.
But yeah, I know like thinking about like Lisa Gilroy's episode of VIP, where they basically, as far as I understand, turned the cameras on and there were no cuts during like the actual shooting because they just the Vic and Lisa were just seamlessly improvising and having to edit down 45 minutes or whatever they did of them just being brilliant into any amount of manageable. I don't envy that task.
It's a lot, and you're correct, and I would echo everything that Eve and Vic and Tamara have said, and broaden it even to like all the way up to Sam and David and all of these people. Like I wouldn't have a show to work on if they weren't there filming it and there weren't performers there giving their craft to these types of productions. And then without the video you wouldn't see it, without the audio you wouldn't hear it. So it is such like an awesome team to be a part of and to kind of collaborate with everybody. But I know I wish I was closer because I think that I would love to be on set a bit more. But I mean, it's crazy to see like sometimes the cut for time episodes of things, and just see like, wow, that was an amazing moment as well. Like, how did that not make the cut? It's tough sometimes.
Yeah. I also certainly don't envy that in Game Changer, especially entire segments are cut and then they have to like digitally manipulate the scoreboards. I'm sure Sam has to do pickups to be like the scores are when those aren't the actual scores.
That's honestly, those are because everything is improvised, like most of the time, almost all of the time, the only ADR that we're doing, which is like dialogue replacement, is to update a point or to update a score or to maybe clarify something that got a little maybe confusing because they lifted out a piece. But other than that, like what you hear is what happened. And those are always tricky moments because it's trying to like not really call attention to the fact that we did that, which is tough because they're in now a different location on a different microphone, doing a different projection and different all of that. So those are the moments where I'm hoping people don't hear my work.
Yeah, it's I think always the best indicator because I don't think I think if you really know and you're really listening, you can kind of tell. But the best indicator is if the camera's not on Sam as he's reading out a point score, and you're like, it's because his mouth would not have matched the words that he was saying.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's considerably more noticeable. I don't know why Top Chef jumps out at me, but I feel like that happens a lot in Top Chef where they clearly have done ADR, and it's a very distinct difference. So I would say like yours is like as good as it probably can get.
That's good to know. And I won't ever throw any other mixer under the bus because I've been there like across other productions out there. And like sometimes the material that you get from the talent, oftentimes it's like you're working with celebrity talent and their availability is not always so flexible. So you kind of you take what you can get. So if somebody has a free moment in a hotel room to record something on their phone, that's what you're getting. And you kind of just have to work with it. It's not as dire, I think, in Dropout. Like the stakes aren't as high as say like a John Krasinski or something like that. But still, performers' time, it costs money and their availability and all of that. So yeah, it's very delicate balance. So I'm happy to hear that is going well.
Yeah. As someone who is constantly trying to get all of those performers to talk to me, I am very aware of how busy they are. as
Yes.
like my next Vic chat is scheduled for like late May, because they're just so busy. Yeah.
Rightfully so.
Yes, so talented.
Yes.
I don't know how I lucked into kind of hosting a podcast with them. It makes no sense to me. Anyway, at some point, because we're desperately trying to sell out, we'll hire you to mix our podcast for us. Because right now it's just me hitting like export on Riverside, and that's the extent of the editing I have the time to do.
Yeah.
It's. We're trying to sell out. No one has taken us up on it yet, but fingers crossed.
It's a good route. It's a good place to go. Selling out.
Yeah. But speaking of episode, you said like you don't do a lot in terms of like what's not already there. One very distinct time that you did a lot of things that weren't there. Deja Vu. Let's get deep in the weeds here. Can you talk me through that episode in particular, all the effects that are getting stacked there? I mean, obviously like a ton of visual effects, but obviously then all the audio effects that have to go with that.
Yeah. And I should clarify. So like when I say I don't do a lot that's not there, it is mostly with dialogue. So we're doing a lot with music, additional composition. Like for instance, on Play It By Ear, season 1 and season 2, I added all of the additional instrumentation to that. So strings, horns, accordions, guitars, basses, drums, synths, organs, like all of that stuff. And then sound design. So anything that needs sweetening on Game Changer, Make Some Noise, Dimension 20, like actually all of that stuff, that all gets done in post. But yeah, we mostly leave the dialogue untouched, except for special effects. So like if Brennan is doing a voice effect or something like that on Dimension 20, or this episode of Deja Vu, which was pitched to me as I got the prep, saying, here's the prep for the episode. We want it to slowly degrade sonically as it does visually. And not having seen it yet, I was kind of like, okay, sure, that sounds really fun. And as I got into the weeds of it and the episode started to unfold to even me, I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. And also like, what the hell is happening? And yes, so let's get into it. Okay, so the way that the mixes are structured, I have the dialogue is separate from the music and the music is separate from these sound effects. So I kind of have control over all of these ingredients to the cake that we're building that is the episode. So I can manipulate that. I can push any aspect of that. So hearing that we wanted to kind of degrade the episode over time meant to me I was going to need to do each of those ingredients, we call them sub buses, individually, so that I could have control over if the music started to break up differently than the dialogue. We wanted to keep the integrity and the clarity of the dialogue so that you still kind of could hear what they were saying, but could understand that we were starting to, destroy it as we went. So that was a bit of a tech hurdle for me to figure out how to build that. And luckily there are thousands of really cool boutique plugins, and I happen to have 500 of those 1,000. So I was just kind of picking and choosing what sounded best, and I landed on this plugin that has a VHS setting. And the reason I really like it is because I grew up in the time where VHSs are so warmly nostalgic to my fabric of my being that like I can tell the difference between something that's trying to sound like a VHS and something that just like really is deeply sampled. And what I mean by that is like people that literally take apart VHS tape players to identify the components and kind of like run audio through it to create sonic signatures that then they can turn into through various pieces of coding and algorithms and shit I don't understand, and sell it for $20 to $200 for people like me to use. So I sampled a few different plugins and I landed on this one that had such a warm, fuzzy character to it that I was able to kind of match to the home videos that we actually had that were peppered throughout, because I wanted those two elements to sound like we were starting to bring them together. So we didn't degrade the actual footage of the VHS that is the home videos, but I started bringing the audio of the episode down towards that. And I just felt like this plugin did it really well. I liked how, as I pushed the distortion, it just got that perfect kind of, played out, worn out tape versus harsh and brittle. And and then to further complicate things, as you start manipulating these mixed pieces, so I'll step back first. So I first mixed the entire episode, and to clean it up, to make sure all the edits were kind of in place, the mouth, the breaths, all of that, and then went back and started to creatively mix it. So it was kind of like a 4-day process where we spent the first day or two kind of mixing the actual episode, getting it correct, and then started messing it up. And there was discussion and back and forth about when it should happen, how much it should happen on the onset versus where we end up, which was a lot of fun. And then, so the interesting hurdle that came in once I started adding the VHS processing to it was that the levels were starting to change on me. So we kind of adhere to two specs. We adhere to a broadcast spec in case they ever want to put it on the actual network television somewhere. And then they also adhere to our dropout spec. So as I started pushing the tape, our levels started jumping and I started falling out of spec really quickly. So I had to kind of like do 4 different passes of this, where I first mixed the episode, then I put the processing on, then I automated the processing as we went, and then I had to counter the processing with a new mix, all to kind of befuddle the audience, which was so fun and up my alley.
Yeah. I mean, it was because everything just sort of like, I mean, it all came together so brilliantly. I'm assuming you're not on TikTok. That's where
I am, but I don't use it. Yes,
that's fair. That's where like my bread and butter is. Why anyone from Dropout knows who I am. And I think I had roughly 100 people message me to be like, "What did you think about this episode? I need you to talk about the episode." Now, one of the reasons why is because I'm one of the people that spread the conspiracy theory about Sam looking at his hands, that he was actually turning into Sam Dalton at the beginning of these Game Changer episodes. So, of course, the fact that we got the word Sam Dalton Reich in the episode made everyone freak out. And I was like, nuts. That is his middle name. Like, it's not,
right.
He didn't actually time travel and like make his mother say that. But I mean, I think that this episode hit something really special, even by Game Changer standards, of so a bunch of people talking about how it's their favorite episode. People have already watched it a bunch of times. And I know it's because a lot of that, like that visual and audio elements of that degradation that sort of like just scratches something in people's brains. I'm sure, well, not sure, very confident that it's, like the what you said of reminds you of those home movies that you've worn out, and you get that like familiarity to it, as well as obviously a very fun and silly game that was happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And like there was a moment when I was working on it where I messaged both Sams, the Sam Gear, the editor, and Sam Reich, the obvious host and CEO, where I was like, this is a pretty heavy episode. Like this is oddly like affecting. And I feel like we really leaned into there for sure. Like as far as kind of doing something over and over again, playing something over and over again, reliving kind of like memories over and over and again, and kind of like this feeling of impermanence, which like for me, being a musician that dabbles in this whole existential conversation of like why we're even here. When we get to do an episode that is a little bit deeper than the normal kind of run of show that we do, I just had a blast with it. And I thought that this one was really going to be special. And I was really excited when this one came out. I even sent Sam's kind of like a screen grab of my Pro Tools session, because I was just like, I've never, even on Dimension 20, like they don't look like this. Like this is, there's so much going into this episode, and the hopeful magic is that people are, you know, when the turn happens, people are kind of like, how long has that been going on? Like I should go back and check that. Where does the turn actually happen? Yeah, it's pretty cool. I feel really fortunate that they brought me on to do that.
Yeah, it's super fun. I don't know if you're familiar with Brian David Gilbert's YouTube video, where it's a similar-ish effect, where it's him talking to his son Jake, and it's present day. Like Jake is watching an old VHS of his dad, and he keeps rewinding it, and every time he rewinds, it's slightly different, or sometimes very different, and it's so upsetting.
Wow.
But it's also very funny because he's in the episode. So now he's been like in two things of like this weird repeat that isn't exactly repeating, with this like VHS quality degradation to it. It's a very strange little world that Dropout inhabits.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's like the most fun thing about this too, is that there's very little distance from like the top to the bottom of, should we try this? Like, let's do this. Like there aren't really that many people that we have to get on board with it. And even for me, like across all the shows, we've been working all of us together for so long that there is like a trust there, but there's also kind of like a shorthand where Sam doesn't have to elaborate. Like he can just say like, hey, we want this to like degrade over time. And then it makes me want to bring my best technical self to it, because it just feels like we're kind of always trying to outdo ourselves, which is just raising the bar in this sneaky way where I'm kind of like, everyone else is seeing what's going on, right? Like this is kind of cool.
Yeah. It's also, I imagine, I mean, probably not for you as much, but still probably somewhat of like, we keep raising the bar, and like at some point, how do we continue to do that? And I mean, obviously, like I think this season has been such a triumph so far in terms of like, well, I mean, that Sam's calling it the mindfuck season, which I think also led to a lot of people with the conspiracy. Anyway, I didn't help. I'll say that much. But yeah, it is so fun that Dropout does these sort of like very different things. I mean, obviously a lot of it is that improvised comedy, but you know, like Game Changer, this particular episode, but a lot of episodes are obviously very different than like some episodes of Make Some Noise, or you know, whatever it is. And obviously getting your hands on every single thing that's coming across. I don't know that I actually have a question here. It's just super cool.
It is. And it's also like I feel like a performer in a certain way because I'm improvising as well. Like everything that comes, especially on Game Changer, like I never know. I don't have the full picture of the series, like, or the season kind of arc. I could, but I choose really not to, because I like to stay fresh and I like to stay surprised by everything. So I mean, the moment that I start to see the episode is the first time I know what's going on. And I think that helps me from a technical standpoint, because I'm experiencing it as the audience would. So if there's something that I'm kind of like, wait, what did they say? That's a good indicator for me to be like, oh, well, we better look at that, better clean that up, better work on that area. But yeah, I mean, that's like the gift of this gig is like, especially with Game Changer and Make Some Noise, like I literally never know what's going to be coming into my inbox from, like, when I see an email from Sam Reich, I'm like, okay, like what is this going to be? It's either going to be can we make this wacky, wild song that we're going to use in 4 months? Or
are you the musical composer for the Weenus?
Not for Weenus.
Okay.
I have done, so that's a friend of mine, a co-collaborator of mine, Zach Caldwell, who did Everybody Do the Weenus. And I think the file name of it was like Weenus Faster, just because we had multiple versions and we didn't really know what to call it. But yeah, it's just, it changes all the time and it keeps you on your toes. And I don't think I'll get to a point where that'll really be ever anything other than exciting. But it's just so unique and so cool. I mean, there's a formula to it in the sense that it's always different. So yeah, I mean, as much as the audience feels it, I can tell you on my end too, I feel that too. It's just like, okay, let's see what this is going to be today.
So fun. How long are you getting, like, how long are you doing your mixing before it's going on, like before it's locked, and like, is it days in advance, or like, are you done with the season of Game Changer already?
I'm not done with the season of Game Changer already, but shows like Dimension 20 I'm done with. We're on to kind of the next season of that. So I get, I never really pay attention, other than seeing like the clips show up on Instagram and stuff, to get any sort of bearing of where we are in the release kind of cadence. But as far as Game Changer goes, I get 2 to 3 days to do the thing that I need to do. And then it goes back to them before it goes to QC, which we have like a handful of people watching the episodes down for video, technical sensitivity, and sound issues. And so if any notes kind of come up to that, we have another day to do that. And then it's usually off to air a week later. So we're 2 to 3 weeks out.
Okay.
So it was kind of fun. Like I knew this one was coming and I was waiting for this one for sure.
Yeah. You had to share the amazing screenshot of the gigantic wall of sound.
Yes. There's nothing like doing a segment mix and then having to redo the segment mix again and then redo the segment mix again and then again. That one was quite an episode.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I am. You said you've got Dimension 20 finished for this season. I'm curious, are you one of the folks that, are you putting sound effects into spells? Are you one of those people who can be like, that's folder sound effect AC or whatever? Like, I know there are some folks in there who have wildest memories for things like that.
So largely the, show's sound design is laid out in the edit by the very talented editors who are Jared, Ash, and Tyler, and more. So most of Dimension 20, because of the runtime and how fast I have to turn these around, those are coming to me late in. But for this upcoming season, which I'm excited for people to check out, we actually did some new sound design for the spells. So the editors have a bucket of these things to pull from, and they're all named what the spells are and whose character is doing it. So we created a bucket for them to use for this upcoming season of new sounds to incorporate with the normal Dimension 20 D20 kind of nat ones and D20s and all of that stuff. So I'm excited for that.
I mean, on a season called Never Stop Blowing Up, it feels like it does need extra sound boosts to it, because it's explosions, presumably. You don't have to confirm, but I mean, it's in the name.
Yeah, I will say the creative direction for it was such that it's all guitar based. So I got to use guitar to create this bucket for the editors to pull from, which I'm pretty excited to have been able to do.
That's very fun. On with Dimension 20, though, I know Hank Green has talked about how loud Brennan Lee Mulligan is. Can you confirm Brennan Lee Mulligan, the loudest person at that table?
100%. I think that was like the first time that anybody in the D20 community ever took note of who I was as a person, like, because I tend to stay out of the comments and the limelight that way, but somebody posted something saying like, oh my God, how loud is Brennan? And I was like, can confirm, very loud. I have a special dialogue chain actually made specifically for Brennan. He's separated out from the rest of the table. He has his own host dialogue chain, which involves a series of auto-limiting compression and multi-band compression and noise reduction. So yeah, Brennan he can project. He's got some pipes for sure.
Mm-hmm. That's so funny. Yeah, I remember obviously when like Hank had mentioned that of just like I can't hear anything because Brendan is so loud. But yeah, it's very funny to be like, well, yeah, of course. I imagine that, and he is. I mean, obviously the person you are hearing the most across all shows because he's the sort of staple of talent there.
Yeah, and it was really surreal too. Like I mentioned that I'm in Austin, I came from New York, and they're all out in LA. And since 2019, so I first came on to D20 for A Crown of Candy season 2, and that's where
Sleeping City 2.
A Crown of Candy was the first one that I came on for. So when I first met Brennan's voice, and since then, I've only ever heard him through the speakers in my room or my headphones. And so when I met him in person just this last year, I was like, this is really surreal. Like I'm hearing this voice that I'm so familiar with come out of your face, like within the same place that I am. It was a bit of a trip, but such a genuinely sweet and an amazing person.
Yeah. And I have heard really knocks it out of the park in the VIP finale. We're 3 weeks away from, somewhere in there. I don't know if you've gotten to mix it yet.
Yes, and I think it's okay for me to say that it's the longest of our episodes that we have.
Love it.
So it's a real treat.
Yeah. When I talked to Sam, it was like 2 months ago now at this point, he was like, Brennan is the finale and it's really special. And I was like, great. So
yeah,
it's also
very
fun
glad that they left it.
Yeah. It's fun because like I talked to Eve and I mentioned something about that to her and she was like clearly leaning back. I was like, no, Sam told me he's the finale. And she's like, oh, okay, great. Then I can say, yes, it's a very fun episode.
Yeah. I'm really, we just found out that it won a Webby and that was so awesome. And I just want nothing but the best for that show because it's so fun. Like it's literally just a blast through and through. Like it just seems like everybody is having a good time. I know I am. So like the post process is a blast and I just only hope for the show to just keep going and going and going.
Yeah. I know obviously season 2 is in pre-production days now. When I talked to Kyle Rohrbach, he said seasons 2 and 3, and I was like, I'm sorry, what? And he was like, well, we haven't greenlit season 3, but like basically like, come on, like what universe are we like? Paula Abdul follows the account on Instagram, and what universe is that show not getting as many seasons as we can do it? Yeah, it's such a fun and special show. And Kyle said that he kind of feels the same way about Gastronauts. I assume you haven't seen any of that yet. Or if you have, like yet. Very early, yeah.
Nope, not yet. That stuff it is kind of like a trip for me sometimes because we'll have a conversation about something about to shoot and then I won't see it on my calendar for like 3 to 6 months. So
right.
It's being the almost last step in the process. I'm pretty far out from when these things actually occur, but I'm looking forward to that one. And there's a lot on the docket.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a really fun and crazy second half of the year for sure.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to it. TJ, thank you so much for joining me. If the folks out there wanted to follow you on Instagram, since you're not using TikTok, where can they find you?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. I am at 6missing pretty much every platform you could think of. So that's me. Swing by and say hi. And Jordan, thank you so much for this. This is so awesome.
This is absolutely delightful. Thank you so much. And we'll have to chat again the next time there's the wildest sound episode ever. I'm sure Sam will bring some new bonkers thing to you to be like, hey, can you, I don't know, make it sound like we're on the moon? Whatever it is that he's going to do. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
I'd be happy to come back anytime. Thank you so much.
Amazing. All right. I don't know how to end an interview, so I'm just going to hit stop recording.
Okay.